Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Izuku Unleashed and Unhinged. This will be part 2, chapters 2 and 3. Chapter 2. You've won a prize, and it's a migraine. Shota Aizawa had become used to headaches. He taught teenagers and worked as an underground hero. Headaches came with the job. So when Shadow made his debut, the headache of trying to capture the slippery vigilante was nothing he couldn't handle. His headache changed from capture to convincing the kid, and gods, he was just a kid, to trying to convince him to become a hero instead. He could see the potential in the kid. He was resourceful, skilled, and smart. Shadow would make an amazing hero if he could just convince the boy to take that path. Shota wanted so badly to see the boy get proper training and access to support gear that would keep him safe. So he made less and less effort to capture him and started giving him tips on improving instead. When he noticed how skinny the kid was, and not in a fit, spends lots of time working out kind of way, more of a never seen a plate of food kind of way, he started bringing him food. The kid was snarky and sarcastic and too kind for the world they lived in. Shota wanted to keep this kid as safe as possible. When he didn't see the kid for a while before the start of school, he'd hoped maybe Shadow had taken his advice and was attending a hero course. That headache had seemed to disappear, right as a new one showed up. Hizashi approached him at the end of the first day of classes to give the headache to him. "Sho, that kid you expelled never went to Recovery Girl, and he never turned up in my office. Did you tell him he was just expelled from the hero course? Does he know he was being moved to general studies?" He sighed. Shota had felt bad about having to expel the kid, but Midoriya clearly had never taken the time to learn control of his quirk, and someone with no drive that thought they could just coast by on a flashy quirk couldn't cut it as a hero. He was saving him from a painful death, if he'd made it to graduation. "I was going to after he was healed. We can just call his parents to inform them." That didn't end up working out for them. The number listed for his mother was disconnected, and there was no other parent or guardian listed, not even a secondary emergency contact. So he and Hizashi took a drive to the address listed. It turned out to be an institution for the criminally insane. Shota may have to live there soon if people don't stop giving him so many headaches. Turns out that the address, when looked up from inside UA, showed an apartment building. They tried different search engines on every device they had, and they all showed an apartment building. The second they stepped past the UA gate and searched with their phones, they got the correct results. Every database they called in favors for to search came up with the same results, and nothing else on the kid. Other than the false information given to UA, Izuku Midoriya didn't exist. With the address seemingly checking out when he applied, there had been no reason to attempt to call Inko Midoriya before. So they had no idea it wasn't a legitimate number. Their next move was to search for the woman in government databases. Inko Midoriya lived across the country and refused to admit she'd ever had a son. She was a terrible liar, but they would clearly get nothing else from the woman, so she was no help. A call to the online middle school on his file proved the kid wasn't just a figment of their imagination, but they only had the same information that was given to UA. They also had no record of him ever applying to the school or taking the entrance exam. According to their records, Midoriya had just started attending one day and made nearly perfect grades. They took it all to Nezu, wondering how such glaring red flags had been missed. A few days later, the rat had proven that Midoriya hacked into multiple systems to forge his identity or erase it. Either this kid was up to something, or he was running from trauma. Considering the disgust in his mother's voice when she was lying about him, Shota was betting on the second option. Either way, it was obvious the kid was insanely smart, but Shota couldn't help the kid if he couldn't find him. Distracted by his search for Midoriya, Shota didn't notice the song for a while. When he started tapping his pen in a rhythm he didn't recognize, he thought it was just a random pattern. Then Hizashi brightened up and asked when he'd started listening to that kind of music. He told his husband he had no idea what he was talking about, and the blonde pulled up the song on his phone. Listening to Gives You Hell by All American Rejects wasn't pleasant. It was exactly the kind of music Shota hated, so he had no idea why he'd have what was unmistakably that rhythm in his head. After that, he heard that god-forsaken song blaring everywhere he went, the radio in the car, in every store he entered, and pouring out the door to a club he passed on patrol. It seemed like every speaker he passed was playing that fucking song. It was like the universe had picked now, while he was dealing with one of his biggest headaches yet, to drive him truly mad. Just as he thought the song was the thing that would send him over the edge while trying to locate Midoriya, he found out Shadow had made a reappearance. 2 weeks into the school year, and Shadow was back. Fucking great. Now he was convinced life was out to get him. Shota kept an eye out for the vigilante on his patrols after Smokescreen alerted him to his return to crime fighting. But he never caught sight of the kid. He heard from Tsukauchi that at least 4 nights the first week he was back he'd radioed dispatch because of course the kid was talented enough to hack into police radios to let them know they had some tied-up criminals waiting on them. He even heard from other underground heroes that they'd gotten assistance from him during a fight, but none of them got a chance to speak to the kid before he was running off to avoid capture. It was unusual for Shadow to not run into Eraserhead on patrol at least 1 night a week. They stuck to a lot of the same areas, and Shota was the only one not actively trying to arrest him, so Shadow would seem to seek him out, just for conversation sometimes. Now the kid appeared to be avoiding him. To top it all off, his wallet was missing. Fuck. Chapter 3. Shadow, the TikTok star. Izuku really got a quirk that liked to shatter his body only to turn around and speed up his healing time. Pick a lane quirk. It only took a week for his finger to be completely healed, and he spent that time brainstorming ideas. He now had a plan for training his quirk with, hopefully, minimal damage. There were also 3 full notebooks sitting on his desk containing his master plan for wrecking Eraserhead's life. The song had gone swimmingly, and it was a nice challenge hacking so many systems to keep track of his movements and play it on every speaker in his hearing range. For now, he wanted to stay out of Aizawa's sight. It would be more fun to fuck with him if he couldn't figure out who it was. Learning to pickpocket in middle school, to get his lunch money back from bullies, was paying off in spades. Izuku had covered his hair with a beanie, put in colored contacts, and used some concealer on his freckles to keep Aizawa from recognizing him when he started stealing his shit. It began with the wallet. He used the cash in the man's wallet to purchase every sorry for your loss card in the store before heading back to his apartment building to start his new photography hobby. Figuring out where Aizawa lived hadn't been hard, but Izuku decided to mail the cards to him at UA so he didn't have to track down a new address too soon. Every card contained a picture of another item he'd stolen from Aizawa, usually 2 things a week. The wallet had been first because Izuku couldn't resist hacking the UA cameras to watch as Eraserhead opened the envelope to see a condolence card. Confusion turned into shock, and then anger, as he opened it to see a picture of his missing wallet. Izuku cackled behind his computer screen while Aizawa realized he had to cancel all of his credit cards. Over the next month, he'd gotten his hands on Aizawa's keys, phone, hero license, 2 bottles of eye drops, a second set of keys, and a cat toy that he'd just bought. When Izuku sent the package to him at UA, he put a note on top telling him it was a prank and he was returning everything he'd taken. The hero was clearly skeptical, but the promise of his things getting returned was too much, and he opened the box. Then he got a face full of glitter, and Izuku was losing his shit at the footage. Izuku hadn't returned to vigilante patrols until he was sure he could fight without accidentally using his quirk. The last thing he needed was to shatter his arm and accidentally put a hole through a mugger. When he did go back, he kept away from Eraserhead. He was still too mad about getting expelled to risk talking to him. Izuku wanted to be sure he wouldn't say anything that would tip his ex-teacher off to his identity. The other underground heroes Izuku had met have taken to only trying to arrest him after he assists them in a fight instead of taking off after him if they just see him in passing like they used to. Smokescreen had even waved at him when she looked up and saw the vigilante standing on a roof as she was patrolling. When he radioed police dispatch to give the cops the location of tied-up criminals, the dispatchers had started sounding fondly exasperated with Shadow instead of telling him to knock it off. So things were going well for Izuku now. He'd even found a silver lining in not ever getting to be a hero. He didn't have to care about the law as much. Making his own support items and renovating the apartment building he'd turned into his secret lair was much easier when he'd started helping himself to the money criminals were carrying when he took them down. Izuku wasn't a monster. If he'd caught them mugging someone, he gave the victim their stuff back and even slid them some extra cash from the mugger's wallet as compensation for the trauma. When the people he'd saved started talking about the new vigilante online and someone said they'd overheard a hero calling him Shadow, Izuku suddenly had fans. Not wanting to pass up the opportunity to mess with the heroes and cops, Shadow set up a TikTok and Twitter for himself. By the end of the second month since being expelled, Shadow's accounts had a decent following, and the cops were frustrated that they couldn't track him down with them. His videos were all with him in full costume so no one could recognize him, and he'd even managed to scrape together the parts to make a voice changer that he wore under his mask. Once a week, Shadow made videos for part of a series called Street Smarts, where he gave tips on self-defense and personal safety. The only videos he posted that were more popular were in a series he titled Interviews with Idiots, where he filmed himself asking criminals questions before he told the cops where to find them. Shadow's followers loved watching some tied-up mugger yelling at the vigilante while he asked them things like, "Did you not get hugged enough as a child?" Or, Would you rather only eat fried chicken every day, forever, or be able to eat whatever you want but never taste it? In a very serious voice like he was an actual news reporter. There were also videos of him tagging every Endeavor ad or billboard he came across. A fan favorite was the huge full-body shot of Endeavor on the outside of his agency that had to be redone regularly because Shadow kept spray painting tutus and tiaras on the man. Videos of him dodging the security the number 2 hero hired after the second time were a hit. The video where he ranked the alleys he'd been stabbed in had a lot of people concerned, even if the video itself was very funny. Until his follow-up video where he said he'd stab himself if people didn't stop telling him to be safer during his fights. That's when they realized the kid might be slightly crazy. It got him more followers. Twitter refused to take down the Vigilante's account no matter how many heroes or law enforcement officers asked. With every tweet about a hero messing up, or how he would have caught the villain, his following grew. There were also the much retweeted life hack tips he posted with things like how to properly slash a tire, how to make friends with stray cats, and the best places to shoplift from. They were owned by Quirkus. According to Twitter's official statement, the account was clearly a joke account and no illegal activity was actually being committed. They continued to stand behind that statement no matter the evidence presented by the people trying to get it shut down. People were torn between believing that they actually thought it was a joke account and that they just liked the chaos Shadow caused. Izuku had just finished his quirk training for the day and was sitting in an alley playing with some stray cats he'd seen as he was passing by, when footsteps entering the area caught his attention. He froze with the kitten he was holding still pressed to his face as he looked up to see a very tired-looking boy holding a can of cat food staring at him. The boy had purple hair and was wearing a UA uniform, and Izuku knew immediately that it was Satoshi Shinso, who'd taken his place in the hero course. Izuku wasn't mad about it. Shinso had earned it fair and square at the sports festival, and it wasn't like he'd been the one to expel Izuku. So he offered the boy a smile. "Hi, I'm Izuku. Are you here to feed my new friends?" All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 3 of Izuku Unleashed and Unhinged. Chapter 4 will be up next. I adore this fic. I hope you all are enjoying it as well. And as always, thank you so much for listening.